Hello, arts fundraisers, and welcome back to our 7th installment. Today, we're going to talk about the most critical moment in fundraising. It's the point where all your relationship building and cultivation efforts all come to fruition. It's the ask. But making an ask is not just about requesting money. It's about inviting the donor to invest in something meaningful. We'll talk about some of the key points. The first one is just preparing for the ask. Before making the ask, you need to know certain things. You need to know your donor. You need to understand their interests. You need to understand what motivates them and what their giving history, what their attendance history looks like. You also need to then set really clear goals for the meeting. What do you want to get out of a meeting? Now, remember from previous sessions, we said when you meet with board members and particularly major donors to your annual fund, we want to do as much face-to-face as possible. So we want to set clear goals for these meetings. What exactly are you going to ask for, and how does it align with that donor's values based on what you know? Number 2, making the ask. When asking for a donation, be confident, be direct, and be clear. It's very simple, but be confident, be direct, and be clear. Start by asking for permission to share the story. This builds rapport and gives the donor the chance to engage. Once you have shared that story and the need, make the ask. Of course, you want to have a conversation. This is not all one-sided. It's not you telling them everything and then say, how's $5,000 sound? But you do need to make the ask, and you do need to be specific. Don't leave room for ambiguity. It's very likely that your donors give to a lot of different organizations, and so what you have on your mind and what they have on their mind might be two different things. And so be specific. It gives them something to respond to. Say, I'm asking you for a gift of $5,000 to help us fund a new addition to our outreach program and education. Number 3, navigating objections. Donors are going to raise objections, or they're going to have questions, and that's okay. They should. If they do, though, don't take it personally. Anybody who knows your organization, likes it, and appreciates it, and wants to invest in it, they're going to have questions. When they ask a question, I'll often say, you might want to ask a question as well, just to clarify, not to play games, but to clarify. Be sure you understand what they're asking, what kind of information they're asking for, that they're clear on the program or the operating budget or whatever it is that you're asking for specifically. Make sure that you work through it together. Somebody could focus on the gift itself, and they might say, listen, I'm not sure that I can commit to $5,000. But that's a benefit of asking for $5,000. Now they have something to respond to. You can talk it through with them, acknowledge their concerns. You can be flexible with them to consider how their gift might directly impact. You could be flexible on payments. Maybe it could be 2 or 3 months over that time. But look for ways, if they really want to do it, look for ways to help them be able to do it. Number 4, closing the ask. At some point, the ask has been made. You've got some sort of a response, or you've gotten the questions. Silence is really powerful, though. Let them think about it. You've asked them to give $5,000 in this case. Maybe they've asked a couple of questions. Maybe you've had a conversation about it. But at some point, let them think for a moment. It gives that donor time to process. Silence is okay in a conversation like this. If the donor commits, that's fantastic. Thank them. Tell them you're going to work out the details of their pledge in writing. You'll send that to them, of course. And if they decline, that's okay too. They'll very likely tell you what's on their mind in terms of what they're going to give. And if they don't, you can continue to have the conversation and ask them what they're considering. But let's get into some more details about the ask itself. At RSC, we actually call it the art of the ask because it really resonates particularly with board members when we want to activate them in the fundraising program. And it represents a basic framework of making a philanthropic ask. Let me just get into that now. And first, we'll talk about your prospects. And in fact, we'll talk about your best prospects, which is represented on this graphic, because that's the group that you really start with. This donut, I'll call it, represents your best prospects for the annual fund. And the further out you go, the greater the number of prospects, but the less per capita value that they likely have. All that said, these are your best people, and you should have plans on how to reach out during the first half of the fiscal year. And so to walk through these circles, if you've seen earlier videos on this, you've seen it before, but let me just touch on it quickly. The first one are your current and past board members. These are, again, smallest group, highest value. that folks who sit on your board are not just vested in terms of money, but they're vested in terms of time and expertise in bringing other people to the table. So really work with that group first. If you don't have them, it's really hard to get anybody else. Number 2 is renewing and lapsed donors. Again, these are generally at the highest level because we're talking about how to approach for a one-on-one or a two-on-one ask. Then we have frequent consumers, non-donors. These are people who come to your events or come to your programs, but they're not necessarily donors. Maybe they haven't been a donor in a long time. Then we talk about occasional consumers. They show up once in a while, maybe a couple of times a year, maybe 3 times a year, and they're non-donors as well, but that's okay. This is your next best group. And then last group, again, very big group, but others who are close to your organization, but they don't give either. That's why we want to zero in on that board first and work our way out. We want to work with the best prospects first and people who will have good questions, people who already know something about the institution and who are going to be warm to the idea that it's time to make a gift for this fiscal year. And remember, when we're talking about not just who we ask, but who's making the ask, what I like to say is not every board member should be involved in the act of fundraising, but every board member should be involved in the process of fundraising. And I'll make that distinction with a little bit more detail here. I like to have 3, maybe 4, maybe 5, it depends. But I need a handful of askers from the board to help me if I'm a development director or an executive director. I need a handful of board members who are going to help me go out and make these asks to their fellow board members and to the upper level major donors who give to the annual fund. Sometimes with sponsorships, but let's keep it on individuals for the sake of this conversation. Now, I don't want the whole board asking for money, though, because first of all, they're not good at it in total. It's not what they're all talented at. And second, it would be unmanageable if we had the entire board. So we want to keep this down to a few people. However, the entire board can be involved in the process of fundraising. If you saw the earlier video where we had the donor flywheel that includes identification, cultivation, and stewardship on it, then you'll understand we need the board to help us keep relationships. That's part of stewardship. So when you see this, we don't want all board members asking, but we certainly want all board members helping us keep those donors. All right, now to the meat of this, the donor visits step by step. The first thing that you do is you call the donor and you schedule a visit. Remember, we're not doing this through direct mail. Sometimes you will have the ask on the phone. It will be a phone call and not a personal visit, but try as much as you possibly can. Try as best you can to make sure that it's face-to-face. And why? Because a personal phone call shows intentionality to them to say, I want to meet with you. You matter enough to this organization that I want to speak with you directly. It's a value statement for them. Keep it simple and sincere. You'd like to set up a time. Is it this date or this date? Are you in town here? And really just take that step of getting the details, the mechanical details down so that you can move on to the next step. Because on the visit, you're going to ask for permission to share the story. You're always going to go with a story. You're always going to go with an update on what's happening, what's around the corner, what some of the vision is for this year, what some of the hopes are, maybe even sometimes what difficulties you're anticipating. If they're close to your organization, they're already going to know some of that. So you might as well talk to them about it and talk about what their role could look like moving forward. On the visit, I would begin by saying, particularly if I were a board volunteer, I would say, hey, would it be all right if I just shared why this organization means so much to me as a board member? Or if you take an artist with you, the very same sort of sentiment can be said. Seeking permission not only shows respect, but it also creates a more open and reciprocal conversation. The next step is ask engaging questions. It's not a one-way conversation. It's not, hey, let's sit down for 45 minutes so that I can tell you a bunch of stuff, ask you for money, and then you tell me yes and we can be done with this. Think about it in terms of a conversation. It's not a speech, it's a conversation. The idea of asking engaging questions helps bring that out. Questions like, what role has arts played in your life? Or what did we do this past year that you really enjoyed that's memorable? What inspires you to give? Even if you know the donor, keep bringing that out. Or a lot of times it'll go to, have you expanded your gift priorities this year? Or did you make a gift that brought you specific joy? Those are the kinds of questions that are really conversational. They're less transactional, and it helps build the relationship. The next step, number 4, is to share these powerful stories. The reason we collect stories is so that we can talk about them, so we can share them, not just to elicit emotion, but also to show real value, quantifiable value, that what we're doing is important, it's appreciated, and it has an impact. Next is to share your personal story. Particularly, again, if you're a volunteer, it's a great story to talk about why you're on the board. Because when you're on the board, of course, it just takes a commitment at all different levels of time, expertise, fundraising support, and going to events. If you're serious about it, it takes up a lot of time. So be ready to talk about why you took that step, why you're on the board. Tell that personal story about why it's important to you that you spend all that time and energy, all those resources to do it. It's really compelling to donors. Be ready to talk about it. Next is to share the pillars and priorities. If you went through the video that we had prior to this, you'll know what I'm talking about. Introduce the organization's top 3 strategic or mission-based priorities. Be really clear, be concise, be passionate, tell those stories again. Briefly connect each priority to a need in the community about why you do what you do as an institution, and talk about the difference that it makes. Because if you want a donor to feel that his or her gift makes a difference, then the program or the organization they're supporting has to visually make a difference as well. Be ready to talk about that. Here it is, make the ask. Share the opportunity with the donor to make a meaningful investment in the work that you're doing and something that they truly care about. Once that groundwork is laid and you've had the back and forth and you've shared information, this idea of just at some point, would you make a philanthropic gift of $5,000 to support this work? Practice saying that. Practice saying it easily. If it makes you uncomfortable at all, keep practicing it. If you're going to ask for $5,000, practice it at $50,000. Just get used to those kind of numbers so that it's natural, it's seamless, and you can have the conversation. Next, not in every case, but in many cases, you could ask for a multi-year commitment. I know we're talking about annual funds, but some donors like to set it up so that they can make a gift over a 3-year period, or make gifts, I should say, over a 3-year period. And they just want to get that paperwork done. They just want to get that acknowledged. Not everybody will want to do that, and I don't say do it in every case, but at least consider it in every case as you're preparing to make that ask. And then, of course, the last step is introduce planned giving if it's appropriate. If you're talking to a 30-year-old donor, probably not appropriate. But if you're talking to someone who's been consuming and giving and coming for 25, 30 years, it's probably appropriate to have that conversation if you haven't already had it, if they're not already a planned gift supporter. Here's some points about our art of the ask. To underscore, let's just touch on that visit and what specifically you can say. This is an opportunity for me to put some words in your mouth, but I really want you to take those words and I want you to make them your own. These will be general words and starter sentences, but I would encourage you to really map these out, take it to heart, write it out, practice it. The first one is share meaningful information about your organization that demonstrates value and builds confidence. And in that, I usually say, think in terms of 3. As you're getting ready for the meeting, talk about what are the 3 things I want to say, what are the 3 things I want to ask. Most people stop with the 3 things they want to say. And I say part of preparation is knowing what you want to ask as well. You can turn this into a conversation. You can make it really strong. The idea would be, let's focus first, though, on the 3 things you're going to say. You can talk about your story, particularly if you're a board member or you're an artist. You can talk about your story. I became involved with this organization because why? If you're an artist, that's going to be a different answer than if you're a board member. Number 2 on that, you could say, I'm a stakeholder at this level because I know my gift advances XYZ for the organization, or I saw proof that it helped, and I want you to join me in making your gift. You can also talk about why you enjoy being a donor. You can talk about why you enjoy being a board member and why you did that, but also what's fulfilling about being a donor. I enjoy being a donor because the benefits, because of the interaction, because of the people I get to meet, because it's fun. You can be as general or specific as you need to be, but have an answer. Why? Why would you ask anybody else to join you? And the best way to do that is to reflect on why you enjoy giving. Next is ask engaging questions to involve the donor in the dialogue. Remember, we talked about what are the 3 things we want to say, what are the 3 things we want to ask. I'll give you some examples. By no means are these the only ones that you have to stick with. For instance, sample questions would be, which of this organization's focus areas and programming are most important to you? So again, we want to get to that motivation. Do they give because of what it does for the organization, for the community, or what it does for them personally. One of the questions can be, of all the things that we do, which are some of your favorite things and why? And it gets them talking. And you can start to make connections by what you learn through that conversation. It's not just a tool to say, see, we had a conversation. It's a real tool so that you can have a real conversation that when you make that ask, it's meaningful to them. Another kind of question is, have you participated in XYZ? For instance, at a museum, if there's a particular class that they've taken, or if it's a conservatory and they're giving lessons, do you take lessons from a teacher here? Have you taken classes here? Those are the kinds of things where you can ask them about their personal engagement. It's not all passive of what they just like. It's also what they like doing. Number 3, as we look at the future, what are you anticipating most, or what are you looking forward to the most? You can hear a lot by asking that question. They'll tell you, what I wish you guys would do is something. And that's okay. Even if you're not doing it, it's okay. It's not a dangerous question. It's a really good question, and it lets them open up some more in ways that they wouldn't normally do if you just ask them pure yes and no questions. We want to ask open questions that spark engagement. All right, next on the list, transition the conversation via permission-based asking. What does that mean? In the same way that we asked early on, can I tell you a story? And right now, we want to say we're calling on our closest friends to invest in the future of this organization. Can I share details with you about that? Why we're asking you for what we're asking? If they say yes, fantastic. Be ready to continue. If they say no, it's okay. Don't plow over it. Just say, listen, I certainly understand. As one of our valued supporters, it's important for us to share updates with you. Can I just tell you a little bit? I'll give you some top-level surface information, and then I want to ask you a couple of questions. Is that okay? And then really making the ask via closing questions. We definitely want to ask, and we want to make a clear ask. And I've said that a few times in this video, but I want to really hammer it home. Make specific asks. And some examples of that would be, will you join us in this vision for a gift at this amount? I'm always specific about it. So there's one. You could say, currently you're a member at this level. What we'd like you to do is move up, become a member at this level. Is that something that you would consider doing today? Maybe to a board member or to a volunteer, you can say, particularly if you're another board member, you can say, I've increased my membership level to this level for the coming season. Would you join me by also making your gift at this amount? The theme I hope you're picking up on is inclusion and specificity. Make sure that your closes are inclusive and specific so that they know what's being asked of them and they can respond accordingly. Follow up on the ask. You can highlight special benefits if you have them. For instance, if there's an upcoming event and them increasing their donorship or moving up to the next level gets them on the invitation list for that event, I think that's okay to talk about, particularly if their motivation for giving is what do they get out of it. That person will want to know that there's an upcoming event, and so they have a deadline to make their decision if they don't give it to you right there on the spot. Highlight those special benefits and talk about that with them. But let's say that they don't give you an answer right there on the spot, which happens a lot, and particularly with new donors, new prospective donors. They're not always going to give you an answer right on the spot. You should have some follow-ups ready. I'll give you just, again, 3 ideas. When an ask is made, it's likely that there won't be an immediate yes or a no. So agree on a specific next step and follow up with that specific step. You can say, listen, I know you need time to think about this. If I called you on Friday, could we follow up and maybe wrap this up and get your answer and get your thoughts on this? Something along those lines. Or it could be, I know you'll need to consider this request. Can I call you in a week? Or, hey, I'll see you at the concert Friday night. Can I talk to you then? And a third option could be, thank you for your time and consideration. Because of dedicated people like you, the organization will continue to inspire and engage the cultural community. That last one's a little wordy, but if it's a new donor, it helps set a tone. A renewing donor, I would likely use one of the other two. When could we get back together? Could we set a specific time? And so that gives you some variety on how you could follow up with them. When I boil this down, what are the next steps? In short, with donor relationships, it's 3 points. You should prepare, you should produce, and you should preserve. Prepare for relationships, produce through the donations that they give, and then preserve those relationships over and over again. That's the idea of getting donors and keeping donors, which sounds a little bit more mechanical, a little bit more industrial. But Think in terms of prepare, produce, preserve, and categorize your prospects. If you haven't done that work yet, do it. Know and categorize your prospects. Number 2 is personalize your donor strategy. Make sure that particularly donors of $1,000 or more, whatever your major gift threshold is, that you have personalized your donor strategy. And number 3, script and rehearse your asks. Make sure that you have 3 things that you're going to say, 3 things that you're going to ask. Practice those and then go make the ask. You'll have much, much better results. Asking for a gift is an art. We'll admit it's an art, but be confident, be clear, be prepared. And remember, it's not just about the gift. It's about building a long-term relationship with a donor or that donor family. Number 4, and this is a discipline. This is a discipline I would ask you to adopt, at least in the beginning. I want to give you a number that I think is manageable. Schedule 3 asks this month. Just 3. Next, plan your follow-up before the meeting. If you suspect that you're not going to walk away with a yes or a no, know what you're going to suggest in terms of follow-up. And last on this, prepare your board for the stewardship activities, because once you get that donor, we really do want to thank them and steward them and make them feel as special as they should for having made the investment in our arts organization. And as a conclusion, I would say asking for a gift is an art. Be confident, be clear, be prepared. And remember, it's not just about the gift. It's about building a long-term relationship with a donor and their family.